Breaking news you won't believe. President Trump is considering a seismic shift in US tech policy that could allow Nvidia to sell its latest H200 AI chips to China. Hold on to your seats, because this isn't your typical political maneuver. It's a potential game changer that could upend global tech dynamics overnight. Diving straight into the details, the Trump administration is now mulling over a proposal that would let Nvidia sell its cutting-edge H200 AI chips on the Chinese market, a move that blatantly challenges long-standing US export controls designed to limit advanced semiconductor technology shipments to China. To put this in context, under current export control policies administered by the Bureau of Industry and Security, companies like Nvidia are strictly barred from offering certain classes of high-performance AI chips to China. These restrictions have historically been aimed at mitigating risks related to national security and maintaining technological supremacy over nations considered strategic rivals. Yet, inside the corridors of power at the Commerce Department, a heated internal debate is underway about reversing or at least revising these rules. It's important to note that nothing is set in stone. This remains an internal discussion, not an official change of policy. Why would such a controversial relaxation of export controls even be on the table? There are several layers to unpack here. For one, there's the transformative power of Nvidia's technology. The H200 chip is not just any component. It represents one of the most advanced AI data center processors available, a critical asset in an era where artificial intelligence is reshaping industries around the world. With China rapidly ramping up its AI capabilities, the potential for Nvidia to tap into the world's largest high-tech market is enormous, but it also opens up a Pandora's box of geopolitical and economic implications that extend far beyond simple trade considerations. Let's break down the potential motivations behind this deliberation. At the heart of the matter is a tension between economic opportunity and national security. On one hand, selling these chips to China could represent a lucrative business opportunity for Nvidia, sparking unprecedented growth in revenues and potentially giving the US tech sector a competitive edge by establishing closer commercial ties with the world's tech giant in artificial intelligence. On the other hand, there's the risk that such a move could accelerate China's technological ascent, potentially eroding the strategic advantage that the United States has built over decades. How do you balance innovation and economic pragmatism with national security priorities? From the perspective of international trade, this proposal marks a radical departure from decades of policy designed to restrict key technological exports. The US government has long maintained the stance that certain advanced technologies are too sensitive to be shared unchecked, especially with countries that may use them to challenge US interests abroad. Trump's recent openness to reconsider these controls signals a willingness to pivot toward a more flexible, market-based approach, even if it means potentially risking the leakage of critical technologies. It forces us to ask, is this a bold strategic reorientation or a reckless gamble that could undermine long-standing national security protocols? Let's also look at the internal perspective within the US government. Sources have indicated that this debate is not just a flash-in-the-pan political stunt, but part of a broader reassessment among policymakers about the benefits and risks of maintaining strict tech embargoes. The Commerce Department is reviewing whether the current restrictions are in step with the hybrid realities of modern global trade, where economic interdependence and competitive innovation are two sides of the same coin. In a world where technology flows as freely as capital once did, might our old rules be holding us back, or worse, putting us at a competitive disadvantage? One compelling aspect of this unfolding drama is how it juxtaposes nationalistic political rhetoric with the hard realities of the global tech market. For years, the narrative in Washington has been dominated by the idea that protecting intellectual property and critical technologies is essential to national security, a doctrine that has justified stringent export rules. Yet here we see potential evidence of a pragmatic recalibration in which economic interests and the need to remain globally competitive might outweigh the fear of technology diffusion. It's almost a contrarian move, a myth-busting signal that the status quo might not be as sustainable as it once seemed. Picture the decision-making process. High-level meetings in opulent government corridors, heated debates punctuated by stark warnings about security risks, and equally pressing arguments championing American innovation in the global arena. Inside these discussions, you can almost visualize a kind of technological chess match where every move could either bolster the country's economic standing or expose it to significant strategic vulnerabilities. The coalescence of these seemingly opposite forces makes this story not only fascinating, but also indicative of the broader shifts reshaping international politics and finance. For Nvidia, the stakes are equally high. The company has long touted its technologies as the engines powering a new era of AI-driven transformation, whether it's in self-driving cars, sophisticated data centers, or even groundbreaking research in machine learning. Yet, because of the rigid export policies in place, Nvidia has been effectively boxed out of the lucrative Chinese market for certain key products. Now, if this deal were to move forward, it would represent a seismic shift in the company's growth strategy. Imagine the boost in revenue and market share if Nvidia's advanced H200 chips were unleashed onto a market as vast and hungry as China's. The potential upside is enormous for both the company and its shareholders, while also providing a tangible signal of how tech companies are increasingly operating on a global playing field with fewer boundaries. Equally important is understanding the broader implications for international relations. For decades, US-China tech relations have been marked by a cautious stance of cooperation and competition. On one side, there's a clear recognition that technological innovation often requires international collaboration and free trade. On the other, there's a pervasive fear that sharing too much technology could inadvertently empower a strategic rival. This debate over Nvidia's chips encapsulates that tension perfectly. If the sale goes forward, it could be interpreted as an olive branch, a willingness to ease restrictions for the sake of economic progress. Alternatively, it might be seen as a departure from the cautious stance that has defined US strategic policies for years. What might be the repercussions on the ground? For one, companies around the world, including competitors in the other countries, will be watching closely. Markets thrive on signals, and a shift in US export controls could set off a domino effect. Investors might start re-evaluating tech stock valuations, national security analysts could revise risk assessments for international trade, and policymakers in allied nations might become increasingly anxious about a redefined global tech ecosystem. It's a prime example of how a single policy pivot can create ripples across global financial and technological networks. Consider also the domestic impact within the United States. Trump's consideration to allow the export of 200 chips to China might serve as a litmus test for whether economic pragmatism can truly override entrenched protectionist instincts. In past administrations, the US government has often been dogged by concerns that loosening such controls could lead to technology transfer that might ultimately harm national interests. But today's debates point towards a more nuanced understanding of risk, one that accepts some degree of vulnerability in exchange for capturing significant economic opportunities. And let's be honest, sometimes the old guard of cautious policymaking needs a shake-up to adapt to the realities of the new global economy. Now, it's worth mentioning that while the Trump administration's approach might seem like a step towards unbridled market freedom, there are critics who argue that it's reminiscent of past political theatrics, a populist bid to signal an aggressive deal-making agenda without fully appreciating the long-term strategic costs. Some experts loudly question whether this shift could inadvertently endanger national security or create a slippery slope for further erosion of export controls. In other words, are we witnessing a calculated risk with potentially massive rewards, or is this a reckless gamble that might backfire in unforeseen ways? These are the sorts of questions you need to mull over as you weigh up the implications for both US industry and international stability. Another fascinating angle is the contrast between Trump's populist rhetoric and the subtleties of sophisticated policy, what I like to call the big picture versus belly deals dichotomy. On one side, Trump's brand has always been about bold, headline-grabbing decisions that break from the norm. On the other, the intricate world of export controls is steeped in legal, technical, and geopolitical nuance. Marrying these two perspectives is no small feat. It simply forces us to confront the fact that modern geopolitical strategy isn't black and white. It's a kaleidoscope of conflicting interests and unpredictable outcomes. Let's also explore the role that economics plays in this debate. For many, the allure is clear. China's booming tech landscape offers unparalleled growth potential. If US companies like Nvidia can gain a foothold in that market, it could translate into a serious boost for American innovation and competitiveness. Global supply chains might be reconfigured, and the traditional boundaries of technology transfer could be redrawn. In a way, this scenario underscores a broader trend where global trade isn't just about low-cost manufacturing anymore. It's about who controls the most transformative technologies. And in the digital age, that's perhaps the most critical battleground of all. Visually, imagine a world where advanced AI chips spark data centers humming with activity across bustling Chinese cities, while high-tech labs in Silicon Valley race to develop the next breakthrough, where it's almost cinematic, a blend of futuristic ambition and the real politic of modern trade. Viewers might find themselves picturing a high-stakes game of chess played on a global board where every move in Washington sends ripples across international boundaries, altering both markets and national fortunes. The uncertainty, tension, and potential promise of such a scenario is what makes this story so captivating. Diving deeper into the specifics, the H200 chip is a marvel of modern engineering, designed to handle some of the most demanding computational tasks in data centers. It's a product born out of decades of research and development, and its capabilities have set it apart as a benchmark in the rapidly evolving field of artificial intelligence. Nvidia's claim that under current export rules, it cannot offer a competitive AI data center chip in China isn't just corporate bravado. It's a statement that underscores the intertwined nature of technology and national policy. Whether you're a financier, a tech enthusiast, or simply someone who follows international affairs, the ramifications of such restrictions and the potential decision to alter them cannot be overstated. Now let's add a contrarian twist that challenges the conventional wisdom on this matter. Many believe that opening the floodgates to advanced technology for China inevitably spells disadvantage for US national security. However, there's a counter-argument that a controlled and transparent process might actually incentivize American companies to innovate more rapidly, thus maintaining a technological edge while simultaneously capitalizing on international market potential. In other words, by facing stiffer competition from abroad, US companies might be forced to double down on research and development, ultimately producing even more superior technologies. Is it possible that this move could ultimately stimulate a new era of American innovation? It's a provocative question that merits serious consideration. And what role does global finance play in all of this? Investors and market watchers worldwide are keenly aware that technology stocks, especially those tied to emerging fields like artificial intelligence, are some of the most volatile yet promising assets in today's portfolio landscape. A change in export policy can have an immediate impact on stock prices, market sentiment, and investment flows. In fact, many financial analysts have already begun speculating on how such a policy shift could reposition Nvidia as a leader in both American and global tech sectors. Picture the ticker symbols flashing on stock boards, the markets buzzing with anticipatory chatter about the potential surge in Nvidia's stock. For investors, this isn't just about technology, it's about the intricate dance between policy, market dynamics, and global economic power. Yet for all the market excitement, there remains a cautious undercurrent among many policy experts. The risk of diluting the protective measures that have long shielded US intellectual property and strategic tech capabilities. With rising tensions over technology transfer and the specter of industrial espionage hanging in the air, the decision to relax export controls could have unintended consequences. It might not only empower Chinese tech firms, but also embolden similar moves by other nations. How do you safeguard national interests when the very tools of economic might could potentially serve as conduits for adversarial technologies? As we near the conclusion of this deep dive, it's clear that the potential sale of Nvidia's H200 chips to China is far more than just a business decision. It's a microcosm of modern geopolitics, a blend of economic ambition, technological prowess, and strategic maneuvering. The case invites us to reconsider long-held assumptions about export controls, innovation, and national security in an increasingly interconnected world. So what should you take away from this unfolding story? First, recognize that technology isn't static. It's a dynamic force that continually reshapes global economies and power structures. Whether you're a tech investor, a policymaker, or simply a curious observer of global finance, the tentative pivot on Nvidia's export policy challenges you to think critically about how nations balance opportunities with risks. It reminds us that in the modern world, the boundaries between commerce and national strategy are more fluid than ever before. Second, keep a close eye on how these debates evolve in Washington. The internal discussions at the Commerce Department, the political theater that often accompanies high-profile policy decisions, and the relentless march of innovation in Silicon Valley all point to a future where the rules are constantly in flux. What might seem like a radical departure today could very well become the new norm tomorrow. As a viewer and a stakeholder in the future of global tech, staying informed isn't just beneficial, it's necessary. And finally, consider the broader implications for international relations. The tech war isn't fought solely on the battlefields of commerce and innovation. It's also a contest of ideas, strategies, and sometimes sheer will. This debate around Nvidia's H200 chips encapsulates that struggle perfectly, offering a glimpse into how modern geopolitics increasingly hinges on who controls the future of technology. As we wrap up, it's meaningful to reflect on how such policy shifts force us to re-examine what we previously took for granted. For decades, strict export controls were synonymous with national security, but as we see with this potential move, the balance between security and economic progress is shifting. The underlying narrative here is one of adaptation, a recognition that in a world that thrives on innovation, rigid rules might sometimes need to bend to reality. Imagine you're at a coffee shop chatting with a friend who's just as passionate about global tech trends as you are. You'd probably ask, do you really think opening up exports will harm our strategic edge, or might it actually propel us into a new era of innovation? That's the kind of question that encapsulates the heart of today's discussion, and the answer might not be clear-cut. It may well be a bit of both. The key is understanding that in complex issues like these, there are seldom easy answers. In closing, whether you view this potential policy shift as a pragmatic response to evolving global commerce or as a risky concession potentially jeopardizing national security, one thing is undeniable. The world of technology and international finance is in the midst of a profound transformation. For tech companies, policymakers, and investors alike, this is a moment to pay close attention to the signals being sent from Washington, embrace the fact that the digital era requires adaptability, and as traditional boundaries continue to blur, every decision made in these high-powered rooms in DC will ripple through markets and ultimately our daily lives. So, as you reflect on today's discussion, ask yourself, are we ready to let economic pragmatism encroach upon the once rigid walls of national security? Or will we find a new equilibrium that balances these divergent forces? The unfolding story of Nvidia's H200 chip export proposal might just be the tipping point in a broader global realignment of technology trade policies. Thank you for watching this in-depth exploration of one of today's most contentious and consequential tech policy debates. If you found this analysis insightful, consider sharing your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is the right balance between innovation and security in our increasingly interconnected world? And if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated on future deep dives into the stories that shape global finance and technology. Remember, the future is being built one policy decision at a time, and you have a front row seat to every twist and turn. Stay curious, stay informed, and until next time, keep questioning the status quo.